We're going to be basing everything we talk about tonight on a book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. You can buy it on Amazon. I highly recommend this book. It's about 12 to 14 bucks on Amazon. You can get it in paperback, audio version, Kindle version, however you read or take in books. It will be the best marriage book you've ever bought. I personally think it's the only marriage book you need to have. There's a lot of good ones out there, so I'm not saying don't read other ones. I'm just saying this one's it, because it's based on 40 years of research by Dr. John Gottman. He set up a love lab. He videotaped hundreds of thousands of couples talking, arguing, fighting, resolving, communicating, and then he just broke it down into, here are 7 principles that make marriage work. He followed these couples for 40 years. And the couples that stayed together and were happy did those things, and the couples that got divorced and didn't work out did these things. And he wrote a book about it called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Now, the title of the seminar is Four Principles for a Positive Marriage. So you might be thinking, how come we're getting shorted on 3 principles? I'll tell you why. Good question, Ozzy. It's because in my work with marriages for the past 3 years since I did the Gottman training, I almost never talk about principles 5, 6, and 7 with couples. And so I reflected on, why is that? You know, the couples come in, they're excited about the research, they're excited about Gottman, they're excited about improving their marriage. We work on the first 4 principles, and then they go away, which, by the way, they're allowed to do. They go away because they feel relief, they feel better, their marriage has taken a real positive turn. And we never get to principles 5, 6, and 7. And so I thought, well, why am I talking about those in the seminar if I never get to those in my own therapy? And here's why I think. So principle 7 is creating meaning in your marriage. And for those of us who have a faith experience, that meaning is already built in. You know, why are you being married? Why do you commit to this? Why are you working so hard at this? Well, that question is answered if you have a faith perspective. We're doing it for the kingdom. Because I do believe one of our greatest witnesses in the kingdom is having a great marriage. As Christians, we should have a great marriage that will witness to the world. But many times, it's hard for us too. But we never talk about principle 7 because that is already built in for most of the couples that I deal with. We also never talk about principles 5 and 6, which is solving your unsolvable problems, talking about your perpetual problems. Because once you do the first 4 principles, talking about your problems becomes so much easier. So I thought, well, for our first Zoom seminar that we've ever done in the history of CFS tonight, because of coronavirus and the pandemic, I thought, well, let's just talk about the first 4 principles. Because what's going to happen is you're going to feel a lot of relief. You're going to feel very positive after employing the first 4 principles, and then it's going to make everything else that much easier. So as we go through this tonight, we're going to do some exercises. There's going to be 4 different times where you're going to spend about 5 minutes as a couple working on some stuff. So if you want to get your phones ready to maybe take a picture of the screen, if you want to get a piece of paper and a pen to be able to write down some stuff, that might be helpful to the presentation as we go through this. If you have any questions, what I normally love about a live seminar is the interaction that I have with the audience. And so I'd like to replicate that somehow tonight. So if you have any questions at all, please interrupt the session by putting your hand up or putting it on the chat, and Steve's going to be monitoring that tonight. And so I would love for you to interrupt me. If you have a question about an exercise or about a principle or about something I say that you disagree with or that you need clarification on, please just let us know. We will stop and talk about that. That's fun for me, so I don't mind doing that whatsoever, okay? So make sure you get your questions in. We're going to go till about 8 o'clock, but I plan on hanging out a little bit afterwards in case you guys have any questions or clarifications. We'll kind of have a Q&A period if you want. So we're going to go a little bit past 8. If you want to click off at 8 or sooner than that, it might be your bedtime, or you might be bored of me, I'm not sure. But if you want to click off at any time, you can. We're going to end the seminar at 8, and then we're going to go for a little bit past 8 o'clock just for Q&A, all right, conversation. All right. So I highly recommend the book. Get it on Amazon. You can work through it yourself at home. It's very simple. It's very practical. Any couple can work through the book at their own pace. You don't need a therapist to work through the book on your own. So I do highly recommend the book. Okay, my screen went away. Is everybody okay? What are we doing over there? Not my screen, I'm sorry, the Zoom screen. There we go. Everybody's back now. All right, awesome. Here is what you need to know about marriage. Right, here's some basics. It's hard for all of us. Marriage is hard for everybody, and we all struggle. Every one of us struggle with our marriages. I'm a marriage therapist. I do marriage seminars. I've been trained up to level 3 of Gottman therapy, and my own marriage is very hard. And it's not because my wife is hard. It's not because I'm difficult. It's because marriage is hard. It's hard for all of us because marriage requires that I be selfless and that I be thoughtful and that I work hard and that I serve. And all that stuff is unnatural for me because it's unnatural for all of us. So I want you to know that marriage is hard and we all struggle. I want you to know that we all marry the wrong person. Here's why I say that. There's not a right one for us out there. And the lie of the world is that somehow you're going to find your perfect soulmate and then everything's going to work out great. There's not going to be any problems, there's not going to be any fights, no miscommunication because you've married the right person. No. We all get married and at some point, we don't share these thoughts with our spouse, but at some point we go, uh-oh, what did I do? I made a mistake. I married the wrong person. No, you didn't. You married a difficult person because everybody's married difficult to be married to. So I know you're thinking right now, wow, this is the most depressing marriage seminar I've been to. He's telling us that marriage is hard and we all marry the wrong person. We're going to get to the good stuff in a little bit, but we've got to be realistic about what goes on in our marriages because if I just looked at Facebook, I would believe that everybody was deliriously happy all the time. And that's just not true. We all struggle. Even the legends of marriage have to work hard at their marriage. It does not come easy for anybody. I want you to know that every couple, according to the research of John Gottman, has at least 10 areas of incompatibility. 10. And when I heard that stat, I thought about my own marriage and I thought, my gosh, me and my wife probably have 20, right? We don't agree on how to clean, how to spend money, what to do on vacation, how to clean the house, how to keep stuff, how to organize stuff, because she likes to organize and I don't like to organize. And so we have at least 10 areas of incompatibility, and everybody does. But if you believe the lie of the world will tell you, well, you're with the wrong person. So you need to go find that person where you only have 2 areas of incompatibility with. But that person doesn't exist. And so if you switch partners, you're only switching the 10 because that next person is also going to have 10 areas of incompatibility. It might be a different 10, but it's going to be 10. And I want you to know that the natural course of marriage is erosion and disconnect. That's what happens in a marriage. Now, we're all shocked when this happens, right? When we disconnect. But that happens to everybody on a weekly basis. Life will not stop giving you reasons to disconnect in a marriage. And this is nobody's fault. If you don't get back, that's everybody's fault. But look, the dog runs away. You have a kid. Somebody loses a job. You change jobs. You move. The mother-in-law comes to visit. I mean, there are 1,000 reasons why a relationship is going to disconnect. This is nobody's fault. Now, what happens is that in the disconnect, I'm thinking, well, surely my wife will realize that she's been wrong and she'll apologize and come back to me. But she's thinking the same thing. Surely he'll realize he's a jerk and he'll come back and apologize. And if we don't find our way back, there's another disconnect and another disconnect and another one until you feel like you can't find your way back anymore. And some couples come in my therapy room and they say, I'm not sure I ever loved you. Frankly, I don't believe that. I don't even know what that means. I do know it feels like this. It feels like the disconnect is so great that we won't be able to find our way back to each other. So, giving you the bad news in order to give you the good news. We can find ways to reconnect more quickly and more effectively. And that's what Gottman research is all about. When my wife and I, early in our marriage, used to fight, it might be a 2-week disconnect. Well, we're nice to each other, we're polite, we're doing the things we need to do, but we don't feel connected. After years of fighting and doing it better, we might get that down to 2 days. Now, after 22 years of marriage, it's down to maybe 2 minutes sometimes. We fight, we know what we're doing, we know how to fix it, and we're right back with each other. So we don't live in that disconnect anymore, all right? So we're going to teach you how to get back, and it's through the practical skills of John Gottman. All right, here's some things to watch out for. The harsh startup. We're talking about the harsh startup, then we're talking about the Four Horsemen, and then we're going to get into the 4 positive principles, okay? So here's what happens with every fight, with every couple on the face of the planet for billions of years. Every couple has the same fight, the same way, every single time. We like to think we're all so unique, right? Like, oh, we just fight way more than other people. No, you don't. Every couple has the same fight, the same way. Now, the details might be different. So you might fight about money and somebody else fights about in-laws or parenting or cleaning or chores or jobs, but you're going to have the same fight the same way. 80% of the time, it's the woman who will bring up the difficult marital topic because guys don't want to talk about stuff. We don't. It stresses us out. It raises our cortisol levels. So when my wife says to me, hey, can we talk? I don't feel better. I'm feeling worse. She's feeling better. We're going opposite directions. I'm a marriage therapist, and I think it's probably 90% of the time it's my wife who's going to bring up the difficult marital topic because even I don't want to talk about stuff. I just want everybody to be happy, and I want to ignore things. But that doesn't help us have a healthy marriage. So my wife will bring up the difficult topic. Whoever brings it up, it's really important how they bring it up. Right? So this is real key to the Gottman research. A harsh startup is when a discussion begins with criticism, blame, contempt, or sarcasm. When a conversation starts harshly, 96% of the time there's a tremendous chance for failure. 96% of the time. The success rate with a harsh startup is 4%. 4%. I wouldn't do anything with a 4% chance of success. I wouldn't invest. I mean, would you have surgery if the doctor said, I think it's about a 4% chance you'll live through the surgery? I'm not doing that surgery. I'm not going with that investor if there's a 96% failure rate. But so many of us continue to have these conversations that drive the disconnect when we know it's doomed to fail because of the harsh startup. Now, it's not just the tone. You can be nice and be contemptuous. I grew up in the South. In the South, we say, God bless your heart. And after we say, God bless your heart, we can say any cruel thing we want to because we've said, God bless her heart, right? It's kind of like the line from Will Ferrell's Talladega Nights, with all due respect. I can say whatever I want after I say all due respect. So the tone can be nice, but the startup can still be harsh. So here's how you do a gentle startup. It has 4 parts, and this is key. Look, in this problem, I share some of this responsibility. But here's how I feel when this happens about a very specific situation, and here's what I need from this. Because behind every fight is something you care about. My wife fights with me because she cares about something. Something is valuable to her. And if I can discover what that value is, we have a good fight. Because now I've understood her and listened to her more completely. So my wife doesn't fight with me because she doesn't care. She fights with me because she cares about our marriage or about something. Otherwise, she would say to me, yeah, I don't care. But if we have a fight, it's because she cares deeply about something. My job as a husband is to figure out, what does she care about? And then we're having a much better fight, and that helps us reconnect much more quickly, okay? Let's talk about the Four Horsemen. Oh, we're doing good on time. Woo! All right. Let's talk about the Four Horsemen, then we're going to get to the first principle and have an exercise coming up here in just a little bit. So the harsh startup ushers in the Four Horsemen. He borrows from the language of Revelation to make an impactful point that these four horsemen rush in and ruin the relationship. They cause a deep divide and disconnect. Here's the four horsemen. They come in sequential order, okay? After the harsh startup, criticism comes in. Criticism is when you attack the personhood and not the problem. You attack their character, but not the issue. A complaint is actually good. Now, I don't like complaining in my marriage. It's like vegetables. I don't like vegetables either, but I understand they're good for me. And when my wife complains about our relationship, that's actually really good for me because it makes us healthier. Now, not a criticism. A criticism is when you attack the character or the person. So if my wife says, for example, hey, I need you to vacuum more, that's a complaint, right? And so I can respond to that complaint. If she says, you are lazy, you don't help around the house, and you don't care about me, that's a criticism, and that's hard for me to respond to that criticism. So complaining is good, criticism is not. The antidote to criticism is that gentle startup that we just talked about. Here's how I feel when this happens. If you're talking about yourself, you are never wrong. If you're talking about the other person, even if you're right, it's not going to work. Look, Jesus talked about this a long time ago when he said, you've got a plank coming out of your own eye and you're trying to get the speck out of somebody else's eye? That's ridiculous. It's absurd. And so many times we talk about another person's speck because that's much easier than dealing with my log. So I would much rather talk about my wife's speck and have her fix that than I don't have to do anything. But that leads to criticism. So when you're talking about an issue, you've got to talk about your perspective. I feel this. I feel sad when we can't spend time together. I'm not wrong about that. If I say, you don't want to spend time with me, my wife's going to argue with me. She doesn't agree with that. So it's going to start an argument. So first horseman is criticism. The antidote is a gentle startup. But if you don't use the gentle startup and you use criticism, it brings in contempt. And contempt, as defined by Gottman, is believing that I'm right and my partner's wrong. That's contempt. Now, if I believe that my partner's right and I am right, that's cooperation. That's partnership. That's a good thing. It's also no better if I believe that I'm always wrong and my wife's always right. That's self-loathing or low self-esteem. That's not any better. The opposite of dysfunction is always dysfunction. And so somewhere in the middle, we can believe that we're both right from our perspective in the moment. But contempt is believing that I'm right and my partner's wrong. It's the gurring. That's what I call it. Like the that thing you do at your husband or wife when they are exactly who they are, but it frustrates us because we're incompatible in some areas. And so you go, that's contempt. The antidote to contempt is nurturing your fondness and admiration for them. Another way to say it is gratitude. I've got to remember that all my wife's strengths that I fell in love with are tied to the weaknesses that drive me nuts. It's my job to remember that. It's my job to be grateful. And I want you to hear me clearly. I'm probably going to repeat this when we talk about nurturing fondness and admiration, but I don't care. It's a good point. It is not my wife's job to be worthy of my gratitude. It is my job to be grateful for exactly who she is. Not who I wish her to be, but exactly who she is. That gratitude is going to soothe my contempt. By the way, a great illustration of this is when Scripture says that the spirit struggles against the flesh. That's what this is talking about. What my flesh does is grr. I get frustrated. The spirit always gives me a better answer, which is gratitude. And believe me, the world right now could use a lot more gratitude because contempt is running rampant. Don't get me started on that, but that's a whole nother issue. But man, gratitude is where we need to practice that in our marriages because the world is full of contempt. But if you have contempt for your partner and you're gurring, it brings in defensiveness. And guys, man, do we struggle with this. I tell you, I struggle with defensiveness so bad. I'm much better now because I've learned over the years. Defensiveness is really a nice way of blaming your partner. You're really saying, you don't see what you see. You don't feel what you feel. You don't hear what you hear. You're wrong. Now look, guys, let me give you some credit here. We get defensive, ladies, because we love you. We don't want you to be upset. Actually, you being upset is the last thing on our list. We hate it. We hate it. No guy ever wakes up in the morning and says, now how can I make my wife mad? We're trying to avoid that. And so our defensiveness is born out of a love for you that we want things to get better. And what I'm doing is I'm hoping that as I explain to my wife that I didn't do what she thinks I did, that she didn't hear what she thought she heard, that she's going to go, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. I'm happy. Let's go have sex. That has happened exactly 0 times in my marriage. It does not produce the result I want. My defensiveness actually produces 2 responses in my wife, and both of them are bad. The research says that if I get defensive, my wife either shuts up and gets depressed. You know, they say this, it sounds like this. No, it's fine. I'm fine. No, it's fine. They're shutting up and shutting down because you're being defensive. What my wife chooses is she gets louder and longer because she's going to prove to me that I did exactly what she thinks I did. And I don't want that either, right? I don't want to extend the argument. I want to resolve the argument. And sometimes I make it worse because of my own defensive. Now, look, it's not just guys who do this. Women do this too. But we really struggle with this. And the antidote to defensiveness is accepting some little piece of the pie. So we got a problem pie, right? And in my delusional mind, I'm only 10% to blame for this problem pie, and my wife is 90% to blame. Now, that's delusional, right? Because that's ridiculous. But that's how we think, right? Guys, you know you think this. Like, if she would just do this, we wouldn't have this problem. So in this problem pie, even if I'm delusional, if I just own my 10%, the fight is going to de-escalate, which is exactly what I want. I don't want the fight to get worse. I want us to come together. So I have to own my piece of the pie. Now, let me tell you a story about a fight I had with my wife. We tend to work out on Saturdays. We go to a boot camp class together, and then we go get coffee, and we talk about us, if we need to, or whatever, the kids, life, our busy schedule. And one time, I actually brought up a problem that I was having in the marriage. I was very proud of myself, because I don't often do that. And I said, hey, we need to talk about something. I was hurt the other day when this happened. And she got defensive. And so my wife is so lucky to be married to a marriage therapist who can point out all her flaws to her, according to the Gottman research, so that she can do a better job of being married to me. I say that with complete and utter dripping sarcasm, I hope you know. So I said to my wife, hey, you're getting defensive. I was so proud of myself. And she said, you are too. And I said, no, wait, that's not how this works, right? When I point out your defensiveness, you're supposed to accept responsibility, and then that de-escalates the fight. You're doing it wrong. Shoot, I'm getting defensive, aren't I? And she said, I am too. And our conversation took a right turn, and we reconnected and actually worked through the issue really well. So even in my delusional mind, when she was mostly to blame, if I own just my 10%, the fight's going to de-escalate. Typically, women want to de-escalate the fight. It's the guys that 65% of the time escalate the argument. They want to de-escalate. So if we just own our piece of the pie, it's going to go much better. Lastly, if you do all 3 of those horsemen, criticism, contempt, and defensiveness, it brings in stonewalling. Stonewalling is when you tune your partner out. You guys are getting along, you're polite, but there's an icy distance in the house. You're still buying groceries, you're not killing each other, but you're also not connected. That's stonewalling. And ladies, I want you to know that guys stonewall when we get jacked up. What I mean by that is when our heart rate gets over about 90 to 100 beats a minute. When we're feeling physically flooded, we tend to shut down. We'll look away, we'll leave the room, we'll walk away. Now, we shouldn't do that. But the reason we're doing that is because we're getting physically flooded and we're stonewalling because of the first three horsemen that have come into the fight. The antidote to stonewalling is actually self-soothing, a breathing technique. Take a walk, listen to music, pet the dog. You've got to go calm down so that you can come back and resume the conversation to reconnect the disconnect. Now, you might want to take a picture of this slide with your phone. You're welcome to do that. This is straight from a poster of John Gottman. I love this. It's just a little shorthand to remind me about the Four Horsemen and their antidotes. If I were you, I would post it up on a bathroom mirror, kitchen door, put it in your wallet, briefcase, bottom of your shoe, I don't know. So, yeah, the Four Horsemen, take a picture. Entertain the illusion of a better partner, even if just for a few fleeting moments. And commitment is rejecting that false illusion that there is someone better for us. There's not. There's somebody different, but there's not somebody better. So I love his definition of trust and commitment. That's going to help us reconnect more quickly if we put those up as the walls of the marriage that we are trying to build. So here's the Gottman Pyramid. If you can see it, there's 7 levels, 7 principles for making marriage work. We're going to talk about the first 4 for the next hour. Again, I've explained that we don't have to talk about 5, 6, and 7 because most couples, if they get the first 4 down, feel so much better. The relationship goes in such a positive direction that they don't tackle 5, 6, and 7. The first 3 principles, so I'm going to go back a little bit. The first 3, which is enhancing your love maps, nurturing your fondness and admiration, and turning towards each other, those 3 create positive sentiment override. It's a really fancy Gottman term for a positive atmosphere, a fun atmosphere, a connected atmosphere. The first 3 principles create that connection, and then when you're connected, you can do the other principles. So we're going to talk about the first 3, and then we're going to add one more as a bonus principle that I think is really important. The first 3 principles create positive sentiment override versus what most of us live in a lot, which is a negative sentiment override. And what Gottman means is, when you're living in this negative sentiment override, you see everything through a negative lens. For example, my wife has little quirks about her because we all do. And when she does one of her quirks, which is to leave her socks on the floor beside the bed, 3 feet from the hamper that we have in our bedroom, when we're connected, I think it's cute. I'm like, oh goodness, she left her socks on the floor again. That's so cute. When we're disconnected, it's not cute anymore. When we're living in this negative sentiment override, her little quirks frustrate me, and I grr. When we're connected, I'm not frustrated. And so the first 3 principles help us keep that connection, and you ought to know that that's a sign when you feel that disconnect, that negative sentiment override, that's a sign you need to go back and work on the first 3. That's not a sign that your wife or husband needs to change. That's a sign that you need to dive back into the marriage and you need to initiate the first 3 principles. That's got to be up to you. You cannot wait for it to be up to your partner. So let's talk about principle number 1. This is what you did when you were dating. At some point, you guys all went on a date. You went to a movie, you went to bread company, you went for a walk in the park, you went for a hike, you threw the frisbee, you played with the dogs, and you learned about each other. You asked questions. Hey, where'd you grow up? Oh, what was that like? Oh yeah, my mom used to do this every Saturday. Oh, yours too? Oh my gosh, I love grilled cheese sandwiches. So do I. You're just exchanging information, and it feels like a connection, because it is. But you're really exchanging data about your life, and you're learning about each other. I would like to think that my wife fell in love with me because I'm so incredibly handsome, right? That is not the case. She fell in love with me because I was curious about who she was. And as we went to Bread Company up here in Clayton, across from the Esquire Theater on a date, I was listening intently because I was really staring at her, because I couldn't believe I was going out with somebody that pretty. That's really as shallow as my thoughts were. I couldn't believe somebody that beautiful was sitting across a table from me willingly. Like, nobody forced her to go on this date with me. She chose to. She thought I was listening, which I was, and she started to become attracted to me. In knowledge, there is strength. Getting to know each other is really getting to know all about your partner's inner world, right? Who are they? What do they like? What do they do? What was their experience growing up like? Your love maps are being intimately familiar with who your partner is. This friendship is a state of mutual trust and support, and it's the key to everything else that we're going to talk about that follows. So what happened with Gottman research is he really turned marriage therapy on its head. Because what happens when a couple comes into our therapy room, counselors get so excited about helping each other communicate better. Because couples come in and say, we fight all the time, we don't communicate that well. And we get super excited. And we have all these techniques, and we got the speaker-listener technique, and you talk about yourself, and you reframe it from your perspective, and then they rephrase it, and then you switch, and you listen, you understand, you rephrase, and none of it worked. Why didn't it work? Well, Gottman explained. If you improve the friendship, the communication automatically improves. And so we had the cart ahead of the horse. And what happens in Gottman research is couples come in and we just want to go back to working on the friendship. Because when you're more connected, the communication becomes much easier. Now, what happens in a marriage is as you add to your life, you get married, you buy a home, you add kids, puppies, dogs, jobs, your life gets busier. We all disconnect, and it feels awful. And we all lose that basis of friendship. And we have to reconnect by diving back into the friendship. And what happens in the disconnect is we change. We become different versions of ourselves. So I'm 54 years old now. I think I'm on version number 5 from when we married 22 years ago. I don't do the same things. My habits have changed. Some of my beliefs have changed. I'm still the same person I was, but some things about my life have changed. And we've got to stay updated on those changes, because if you don't stay updated on the different versions, we lose that friendship and it deepens the disconnect. Let me tell you what this actually means. So a couple of years ago during the Winter Olympics, the United States was playing Canada in a women's gold medal hockey game. And I love the Olympics. I love any sport that's in the Olympics. I can watch curling and get super into it when normally I don't care about curling. But if it's in the Olympics, I love it. We were staying up late to watch this gold medal hockey game between the U.S. women's team and the Canadian women's team. It started late. It went late. I had to work the next day, but once I was into the second period, I'm like, I'm going to finish this thing out. My wife joined me. Now, my wife hates sports, and she's not competitive at all. But we were sitting on the couch watching this compelling gold medal hockey game, and it ended at the third period tied. It went into an overtime, tied. It went into a second overtime, tied. And it's about 2:30 in the morning, and I can't go to sleep because I've got to see the end of this game. And in the excitement of this incredibly exciting game, that America won, by the way, woohoo, my wife said, I'd play hockey. And I looked over, I said, what do you mean, you wished you'd played hockey in high school? No, I'd play hockey right now. I said, right now, I think she was 51 at the time. I'm like, you're a 51-year-old. You'd go join a women's hockey team and play hockey right now. She said, yeah, I'd do it right now. I said, that would be super cool. I would love to see her get in a fight with somebody and just unleash the fury. That would be so exciting to me. That's not a big moment. But Gottman says the deep drama is in those little boring moments that you never think anything about. In that moment, we deepened our friendship just a tad. Because I learned something about my wife that I would have never guessed. She got so into this game and so worked up. It was cool to see. We all become different versions of ourselves over the years. And if you don't stay updated on those versions, you lose the connection and you lose the friendship. Affairs happen because of a loss of support and friendship. Most affairs don't happen because people are horrible and want to ruin their marriage. Most people don't. Affairs happen because there's a loss of connection in the covenant marriage, and it makes it vulnerable to outsiders who don't mind coming into a covenant marriage and wreaking havoc, much like the hackers did to our Zoom meeting much earlier. How you like that for wrapping that up in a little connection, Jeremy? And it makes me mad. But the world is not going to stop doing that. So we've got to buffer our marriages against that temptation by keeping our friendship strong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play our first game. Woohoo! 5 minutes to play the love map game. So if you have a phone or a pad and pen and paper, I'm going to tell you how to play this game. Then I'm going to stop talking, and you guys are going to play this game in the comfort of your own home for 5 minutes. Okay? Got it? What you see in front of you on the screen is a bunch of love map questions. Jeremy, if we can go to that slide.
Yep.
Perfect. There we go.
Hopefully they can see them.
Hopefully you can see these questions. If not, you can take a picture with them on your phone and enlarge them. But I hope you can read some of these questions. Now, here's how you're going to play this game. Gentlemen, I want you to start this game. You are going to say to your wife, pick a number between 1 and 51. That's how many questions are there. And she's going to say, I don't know, let me pick on somebody here. Beata, can you, oh yeah, there she goes, she can hear me. I want you to hold up, just don't even look at the questions, just pick a number between 1 and 51 and put it up like with your fingers. Let me see it. 20 or 3? Question number 3. Got it. Thank you, Beata. I appreciate your interaction in this Zoom seminar. What was I wearing when we first met? Now, this is really important. Guys, you're not going to get in trouble if you don't remember, okay? You cannot lose at this game, because if a guy thinks he's going to lose, he's not going to play. So ladies, he does not get in trouble when he doesn't remember this question, okay? We're updating. We're updating a database. That's all we're doing. So guys, you don't have to get this right. And so you would ask your wife this question, or she would ask the question. You would say, pick a number. She picks number 3. What was I wearing when we first met? And guys, you're going to guess first. You're going to say, I think you were wearing that schoolmarm dress with the Amish top hat and black patent leather shoes. And she's going to go, no. That is, what? Are you crazy? That was not me. I was not wearing that. No. Remember, we were going to play Frisbee in the park, so I was wearing my jean shorts because that used to be a thing. And I was wearing that tank top, that red one that I had to throw away. Yeah, and you update. So then you switch. And ladies, you'll ask him that question. And then you guess before he answers. Nobody wins a trophy, guys, so if you know more than her, so what? Because guys say that to me all the time. They come back into the office and go, I knew more than her. And I say, you know, there wasn't a medal involved in this. There's no trophies. So guys, you don't win a medal. And girls, he doesn't get in trouble. And so just pick out some questions. And what it's going to feel like is what it used to feel like when you were dating. It's going to feel fun. And so it's not even going to feel like therapy, right? So have her pick a question. You ask the question, guess before she answers, and then she's going to update you, and then you switch. We're going to give you 5 minutes to play this. We don't expect you to get through all 50. If you can just get through a couple, it's going to give you the experience as to what this feels like with this first principle. Okay, so is everybody ready? I give you 5 minutes starting now. Let us know if you have any chats or questions. If you have any questions, put it in the chat, and we'll get an answer to you. So everybody go. 5 minutes. Did you put the timer thing up? Ooh.
Yep, I muted you. You're good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I got the timer going. Good recovery.
Oh, I see the timer up there. I couldn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, I made it. I'm gonna make it work.
Oh my gosh. So 7:15. Oh.
That just sucks.
It does. Oh. So, when I said earlier, like, hey, it'd be funny if you like crickets or booing or, I thought the porn was.
That's right. That's what it was.
I think that was a little bit much.
I need to see if I can. I did find one. I don't have a sad trombone.
Where are the chats over here? Oop. Make sure. Okay, nobody's asked a question.
Is Stephen looking at the chats? I can look at the chats if they're to everybody.
Okay. That was 5 minutes. We're back. I hope that was a good experience. Does anybody have any questions on that? If they want to raise their hand real quick and have a question about it or put it in the chat, we'll stop and talk about the love map game for just a little bit. Anybody? So what you can do, we don't have any more questions, is keep those questions. I hope you took a picture of it with your phone. You can also find this online. If you just Google Gottman Love Map questions, they'll pop up. So you can find this anywhere. This is portable. You can take this on your next trip, your next drive, your next Saturday. You could ask these questions as you're driving around in the car, just to start to build that connection back. Because it should have felt a little bit like what it felt like when you were dating. I had a couple in my office, and we were playing this game, and I think one of the questions was, what was I wearing? This question, what was I wearing the first time we met? He said, oh, man, you walked in the room, and you had on these tight white pants and this sparkly red top and high heels. Man, he goes, I knew I had to talk to you that night. She goes, you remember that? He goes, oh, yeah. And then we stopped and talked about that night, about how he went over to her and tried to buy her a drink, and she wasn't having any of that, and he finally got her number, and they spent 20 minutes talking about that night. And then they came back to me and they said, oh, we're so sorry, we got so off track. And I said, that's not off track. That's exactly what we want. We want to refresh those memories, and that's just something she never knew, because when had they ever had the chance to talk about the first time he saw her? It never came up. And so it was a really good moment for them to remember the first thing she was wearing when he saw her. It was so striking to him. So let's try to do the love map questions on your own after the seminar, on the weekend. You can do a question a day, you can do 10 a day, you can do whatever you want. But I want you to do these love map questions. Now, I do have to call out Joe Lomax. Jeremy is watching the monitor, Joe, and he said when I talked about how my wife wasn't in love with me because of how handsome I was, he said he's never seen anybody roll their eyes so big. So I'm a little offended by that, Joe, and I'm hurt. I just want you to know. All right. Thanks, Jeremy, for catching that. We are watching. We are watching. That's right. All right, let's go to the second principle, nurturing your fondness and admiration. It's not as easy as it sounds, although it is every bit as important. Fondness and admiration are two of the most crucial elements in a rewarding and long-lasting romance. Not relationship, a romance. You know what comes easily? The contempt, the gurring, the frustration. I don't even have to work at that. Like, that just hits me, right? I walk in the door and the kitchen's a mess and the dog's barking and the kids are yelling, and man, it's easy to choose contempt and frustration. You know what takes discipline? Is nurturing your fondness and admiration. I love that he picked the word nurturing, because it's not going to just happen. The negative things happen. You don't have to worry about those, like an interruption in a Zoom meeting. That's going to happen. The negative things happen. We have to work at it to make the positive things happen in our relationship. Listen to this statistic. 94% of couples who put a positive spin on their history and their partner have a happy future as well. It's not a complete guarantee, but it's about as close as you can get to a guarantee of a happy future. If you put a positive spin on your past and who you married. Because again, everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses, and we've got to focus more on the strengths than we do on the weaknesses. So I want to be about right here. I want to be completely aware of what my wife struggles with, but I want to hold her strengths in front of those. What happens in a marriage is typically through time and erosion, we lose our focus and we find ourselves here. Some couples come in my office and say, I never loved him or her. That's just not true. That can't be true. You don't stand at the altar or justice of the peace or the priest or the minister with somebody you don't love. I get that it feels that way now. But what happened is your focus eroded. because he or she probably never changed. These are true throughout our lifetime. And what happens in my relationship is I need to be about right here. The strengths are in front of the weaknesses. Time and stress and disconnect and erosion tempt me to go here. It's my job to bring it back. All right? So I'll tell you about a story that happened to me in aisle 7 of Deerburgs. I think we have time for this because really the seminars are just a chance for me to tell the stories I like from my marriage. That's really what this is all about. I love this story. So back a long time ago, we used to have a football team called the Rams. I know it sounds crazy, but the Rams played in St. Louis, and for a minute, they were actually really good. And so on Sunday, that first year they were great, and Kurt Warner was the quarterback. They played every Sunday at noon. And so I swear the preacher at McKnight always went a little bit longer on game day just to torture me. That's not true, but that's how I framed it in my head. And so we would be speeding home to get home in time for the game, because if you missed a few minutes of the game, you probably missed 3 touchdowns. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. On the way home, my wife said, "Hey, can we stop at the store real quick?" If you know my wife, there's no real quick about her at all. And I said, "Do you want to go grocery shopping?" Because when I get stressed, my voice gets kind of high. And so I was already stressed about missing the game. And I said, "Do you want to go grocery shopping?" And she said, "No, I just want to get a couple of things for the game. I want to make you a dip for the game." Well, how can I say no to that? So I'm like, okay, but let's hurry. Like, let's get in and get out because I want to go home and see the game. We're in aisle 7 of Deerburgs at Baxter and Manchester Roads. She's in the aisle, and she's got a can of beans in one hand, and she's got a can of beans in the other hand, and she's reading the back label. And I walk up to her and I go, "Pick one, let's go." And she shushed me, shh. And now she's mad at me, so I've only delayed me getting home to see the Rams, because now she's thinking about how much of a jerk I am. She's not focused on the beans anymore. I walk to the end of the aisle, and if I'm a cartoon character, there's like steam coming out my ears. And I turn around, and I start my next thought with this: I am such a jerk. I do my best work when I start with that phrase. I'm such a jerk. That's who I married. That's exactly who I married. It's not a surprise. She didn't change. That's exactly who I married. And now I want her to be different. I'm the jerk. When I would go over to her house and we were dating, the meals were impeccable. One time she made me handmade, hand-rolled sushi. And I thought to myself, I could do this every day. Because in my mind, I'm picturing coming home from work and every day, in spite of the chaos of kids in life, there's going to be handmade sushi for me. I was ridiculous, but that's what I thought. And so when she's doing exactly what she does, I'm now frustrated. I walked up to her and I said, "Forget it. Take your time. What am I doing?" Right? You have your passion, which is food. I have my passion, which is football. How can I not let you have yours? And by the way, when I thought about it, I'm going to watch, I recorded it, I'm going to watch NFL prime time, I'm going to watch the replays all day long. I'm losing my marriage over a stupid football game. I said, "We're fine." And she said, "I'm ready." I'm like, dang it, that's how life works. Like as soon as I give up something, I get it back, right? But in a moment, I went from focusing on her weaknesses to this. And she never changed. This is my job. So we want to do an exercise for about 5 minutes that's going to help you practice nurturing your fondness and admiration. So if we can go to the next slide, Jeremy. Yeah. We're going to give you some phrases. We're going to give you, okay, there we go. Take a picture of that with your phone. We're going to give you those phrases to fill in the blanks because it's got to be specific. I'm proud of the way you do your job, raise the kids, love your family, cook your food. It's got to be specific. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm proud of you." That doesn't mean much. So we want you to be specific in your encouragement to your spouse. I'm proud of the way you fill in the blank. I'm attracted to your fill in the blank. I'm impressed that you fill in the blank, and I like how you fill in the blank. Now, if you've taken a picture of those, we want you to do all 4 to each other. And guys, since guys have a harder time with words, typically, not all the time, but sometimes guys have fewer words to choose from than women do. If we can go to the next slide, Jeremy. We're going to give you a cheat sheet, guys. There we go. There's some words you can use if you can't come up with them, okay? So those 4 statements, we want you to fill in the blank. Here's a cheat sheet if you need it. We're going to take 5 minutes. Probably won't take that long, but it might. And you can do more than what we're asking you to do, but we're going to take 5 minutes for you to fill in the blanks on those 4 questions to each other right now. Any questions?
To the other questions.
Okay, Jeremy's going to go back to the other questions to let you see that. Okay, we're going to give you 5 minutes. Go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were done.
No, you're okay. You know I don't care if you interrupt.
Changing some of the views in here. I forgot that you were looking at them up there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I sometimes get confused about what's going on. So if we do this again, I'll have it down more.
Yeah.
But like, normally I'm good. You came over and pointed at the camera, and I wanted to stop and go, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, sorry. Look here.
Normally I would know what that means.
Yeah.
But with all this going on,
Oh, no, I completely get it.
and then, yeah,
I
it's
completely get it.
next time it'll be much easier because I'll know what's going on with all this.
Yeah.
And next time we won't have a porn break, so.
No, but honestly, I mean, you're gonna be able to do this with anything else that you do. If you have an in-person one, you can still do Zoom with this on here.
Yeah,
Honestly, I mean, that's the really nice part about
as
all
long
this.
as you're here or someone's here to do all this.
Well,
I can't do any of this.
I think it can be,
No.
I don't know that it can be easier than this with what we're doing. Like yeah, I love having the different things I can put up there, like the clock and
Yeah,
that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
it's cool.
It's just fun. I think it adds a little touch of professionalism.
It does, yeah.
What am I doing? I'm gonna sit down.
Well, even the whole porn thing and getting off and getting back on, that was professionalism, man. Oh, man.
And now I'm thinking as I'm buzzing through these things, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I'd have run out of material if we hadn't had the break. I've got some slides at the end that I can do that were extras that I put in, because I didn't know how the timing would be on this, so
Yeah.
we would have been fine, but now I'm going, man, we're getting through these really quick. I'm kind of glad we had that break.
Yeah, it's kind of glad. Like I said, we've learned on how to do Zooms, and Jody's learned how to set up a Zoom.
Man.
Laura goes, "Is Steve mortified?" I was like, "I don't think so. I think if we were a bunch of kids, it'd be, if it was a youth group."
Oh, yeah.
Could you imagine like Winterfest doing something like this?
Oh,
Like, no.
Who's Winterfest doing it?
It's all like, we're gonna send you videos and you do it with your church.
Oh, is that what you just gave to him? Did you just give
No,
him
I
a
gave
box?
him some cameras.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I gave him some,
Oh,
like, some of those cameras that are up there on the wall.
Yeah.
I gave him those.
Yeah.
He ordered like 3 new ones and I had access to them and he didn't,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, Dudley said it costs about $25,000 to put those videos together.
I bet.
Yeah. And our youth groups paying for per youth group or?
Yeah, I don't know how they set up the payment.
Yeah.
Like if it was, if you have this many kids in your youth group, you pay this.
Yeah.
If you have this many, you pay this. I'm not sure how they did it. I
Yeah.
didn't ask McKaylee about that part.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
it's just,
we're gonna save a ton of money not renting a bus and a hotel this year.
Oh, yeah.
that's right. The bus is the big one.
Yeah.
Bus is the real big one. So, I'm looking forward to, I bought a couple extra batteries and a few other things for my camera for this guy. Whenever we go down to Honduras, I'm so looking forward to
Oh, yeah.
documenting it.
Oh, that'd be
Just
awesome.
doing
Yeah.
video and stuff like that. I think that's gonna be fun. I wanna experience it. And so many times, like at camp, I get stuck doing the video or doing,
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Right.
That I'm just like, oh, man. But I know that when everybody's done means a lot to them, so.
30 seconds. Oh, we'll laugh about this for a long time.
I could not have imagined that
wish-
outcome.
I really wish that you would have been recording the Zoom. Somebody chatted.
What do we got?
Oh, I got it this time, Steve. It was,
Yeah, that was
Dina.
Dina. Yeah.
okay, Ian, hold up, let me undo this.
All right, here we go.
Fun?
All right, we're back. Any questions on that? Raise your hand or put it in the chat about that experience or how the exercise went.
Lots of fun.
Who was that? Was that Ozzy?
All right.
Who said lots of fun?
Yeah.
All right. Good. I hope Joe gave you lots of compliments, Ozzy. You deserve them. All right, we're going to talk about our third principle, and these three create, again, a positive sentiment override. They're going to create a positive atmosphere in your marriage, which is going to help the connection process. The third one that we're going to talk about, I will tell you personally, challenged me the most. So of these principles, there might be one or two that you're pretty good at. You may not be bad at all of them. I will tell you I struggled with this one. Don't anymore because I'm working really hard. But I didn't know what this was. So of all the principles of Gottman, this one personally impacted my marriage the most. He calls it turning towards instead of away. Another way to say it is responding to the bids. So what Gottman says is that when we start dating, we are our own individual people. These represent individuals. And you see each other, and you like each other, and you're attracted, and you start to exchange information, and you start to join your life together. And at some point, you make a covenant decision, we're going to get married. So you attach your rooms, and you start building a home. But even though I'm married, I'm still an individual. I still maintain my own private headspace. I'm still a person, but I add to that I'm now a husband, and you add that you're a father, and then you add some kids and a dog and a cat, and you start building this home that our marriage lives in. And Gottman says that although you live in these rooms, every once in a while, maybe quite often, one of the spouses will open the sliding glass door between the two rooms and invite you in for a visit. We can't spend every moment 24 hours a day together. We have to go do jobs, we are coaches, we are teachers, we have to mow the yard, so we can't spend every single moment together as a married couple. And so often we are separated. And when we come back together, we have a chance to interact with each other. And I will tell you that my wife makes many more bids than I do. I tend to be more independent and solitary. My wife tends to be more relational. She makes a higher frequency of bids to me than I make to her. And I was a poor responder to the bids. And it made my wife one day say to me on the patio on a Saturday morning as we were having coffee, she said, "Can we talk?" Which I was like, okay, I know that means I'm terrible at something. And so I'm feeling worse and she's feeling better. We're going opposite directions. She said, "I got to tell you that I'm deeply disappointed in this marriage." And I said, "Tell me about that." We talked for about 20 minutes. It was nothing new. I knew what she was going to say. I know what I'm bad at. And we felt better about it. The strength of my marriage is she can tell me that and I can respond to it. The strength of my marriage is never going to be that I'm not a disappointment, ever. I am a continual disappointment to be married to because we all are. We're human beings. We're screwed up. And in spite of that, we can feel very connected if we respond to the bids better. So Gottman says the deep drama in a marriage is in the boring, neutral moments that nobody notices. We are almost never going to have to carry our wife out of a burning building to save her life. We're not going to have to fight a fiery dragon to save her. Your marriage is going to be won or lost. It's going to be saved in the boring, neutral moments that almost nobody would notice. And Gottman calls these the bids. Now, guys, it's about to be baseball season. right? We just got a guy named Nolan Arenado to play third base. If he bats .330 for this upcoming season, are you happy? Raise your hand. If he bats an average of .330, right? If you do that for a career, where do you go? Steve, that's right. The Baseball Hall of Fame, right? If you bat .330 in baseball, you go to the Hall of Fame. If you bat .330 in your marriage, do you know where you go? Divorce court. Divorce court. If you respond to these bids 86% of the time, you're going to have a successful connected relationship. If you respond 33% of the time, those couples get divorced. That's a shocking statistic, right? So what that really means is you have to work really hard at responding to the bids. You have to work really hard at staying connected. And I will tell you, I didn't know what that was. The way I describe it is my wife is always making bids to me. She said to me once, I sometimes feel like a mosquito in your ear that's buzzing and annoying you, and you swat me away. That was hard for me to hear because I didn't want her to feel that way. But it was true. So here's an example of responding to the bids. I put a bird feeder in the backyard outside the kitchen window because my wife said she would like that. So being the dutiful husband that I am, wanting to keep her happy, I put up a bird feeder in the backyard. I don't care about birds. I have nothing against them, I just don't care about them, right? So I'm not looking to do them harm, but I don't want to sit and watch the birds. If my wife is in the kitchen and she says, there's a bird on the bird feeder, I'm usually in the other room, looking on my phone at sports, reading about sports, or watching sports. I don't care about the birds. And what I would do in the past is not respond at all, which is exactly what Gottman's talking about. So now my wife is in the kitchen thinking in her private thoughts, we can't even talk about birds. I'm so lonely in my marriage. If we can't talk about birds, we can't talk about anything. Why am I married to this guy? Now, I don't want her thinking that. So I have to respond to that bid. I don't have to care about the bid, so I'm not going to run in the kitchen and go, oh my God, what kind of bird is it? I'm so excited. I'm not going to do that. I don't care. I do have to respond. And Gottman says almost anything counts. So all I have to do is this, guys, watch this, watch this. This is all I have to do. Yeah, I've responded to the bid. I don't have to care. I can still make my faces in the other room. I can still be a jerk, but I have to respond to the bid. I don't have to fake it and run in and act like I care about the birds. I have to respond to the bid. And if I'm really doing my job, I might go, yeah? What kind? Oh, it's a cardinal. It's so beautiful. It's so bright red cardinal. Great. That moment makes our marriage feel more connected because I just responded to her bid. And Gottman says we miss these bids. These are crucial mini moments in our marriage, and we miss them sometimes because of several different reasons. First, let me say, there's a saying that says you can die a death of 1,000 cuts. You can lose a marriage from 1,000 missed moments. You can build a marriage off 1,000 little positive moments, right? So these mini moments that we think aren't a big deal, they're actually a huge deal because 1,000 of these little deals become an untenable deal, right? We can't recover from it. Here's why we miss these bids. Many times we miss a bid because it's wrapped in a negative emotion. Guys, I tell you, I struggled with this one for years because sometimes my wife makes a bid to me, but it's wrapped in irritation or criticism or anger. And I have to see through that. So let me tell you a story. I think we got enough time. Let me tell you a story real quick of the one moment in my 22 years I got it right. I could spend time telling you about the 1,000 I got it wrong, but we don't have that much time. I'm telling you about the one time I got it right. And I was so proud of myself because these are easy to miss. At the time we had 3 kids, 2 in high school, 1 in middle school. We had 2 drop-offs. We had 3 lunches to make. And my wife can't do an easy lunch. I told you the story about the sushi earlier. She has to get up early and make like these wonderful chicken sandwiches for my kids. You know what I got as a kid? I got peanut butter or I got bologna, and I didn't get anything else. No mustard, nothing, just bologna on bread, right? Ozzy's laughing because he must have had the same lunch as me. And I looked at these kids that had lunches that had a ding dong in it, and I thought, well, how rich are they? Right? If you got a ding dong in that foil for the old people that we used to look at and be envious, I didn't get that. So my wife is making these luxurious lunches for our kids, and she's stressed. And one morning, she lost it. I mean, lost it. I take care of everybody else. Nobody takes care of me. I'm making these lunches for the kids. They don't appreciate it, and you don't do anything to help. And she stormed out of the house. And I thought, this is a bid wrapped in a negative emotion. I didn't respond. I didn't get angry. I waited a couple hours, and I called her at work, and I said, you're right. I don't do as much as you. We split the drop-offs, but we don't split the lunch because I'm not doing that. I'm not helping the kids with lunch. They should be making their own bologna sandwiches. But you want to do these lunches, and I don't help with it. I said, so you know what I could do? I could do both drop-offs. I don't mind that. It doesn't bother me at all. And that would give you an extra 20 minutes to sip a cup of coffee or watch a show or get to work early. She said, well, we can talk about it. I said, we're not going to talk about it. That's what I'm going to do. It was a bid. I didn't even worry about the fight. She was asking for help because she felt overwhelmed. And if you can respond to the bid instead of the emotion, you're going to get to the point where you can solve problems and reconnect instead of staying stuck in the disconnect. Another reason we miss bids is because we're digitally distracted. We got our phones, and we got Facebook, and we got games, Clash of Clans, and we got Twitter. We got all these wonderful things on our phones and our laptops and on our TV, and we're digitally distracted from responding to the bids. And we sometimes don't respond because, frankly, we're just mad. We have contempt. And I say in my mind, my delusional, messed up mind, she doesn't deserve my attention right now. Whew, that's bad. So we've got to get over these things and respond to the bid. Okay. My laptop stopped working. Jeremy, can you go to the next slide?
Contempt? Okay. Yep. Stress-reducing conversation.
Okay, let's talk about the stress-reducing conversation. Then we're going to have you do a quick activity. The stress-reducing conversation is the conversation at the end of the day that's not about the two of you. It's about work, the dog, the neighbors, the kids, the school, traffic. It's about everything else but the two of you. How was your day? And your wife or your husband starts to tell you about their day. Now, there's a trap here waiting to be set for you. And I'm going to tell you how to avoid it. And then I get to tell you one of my favorite stories for marriage, because again, the seminar is all about me telling you my favorite marriage stories, selfishly, because I love these. So the trap that's laid for you is that if we don't watch ourselves, we can tend to side with the enemy. And you can never side with the enemy. In the stress-reducing conversation, you have to be on your partner's side. The temptation is to side with the enemy because we know what our spouse's weaknesses are. So if my wife comes home and says, I had a bad day at work because I was taking too long to get this project done and my boss was upset with me, I'm going to think in my head, well, she's a perfectionist. She takes a long time to get things done. I can kind of understand where he's coming from. And if I say that, we now have a problem. What was not a problem for us is now a problem squarely in my lap because I sided with the enemy. I always have to side with my spouse. Now, I get to tell you my favorite story about how I'm really a jerk. That's the core of most of my stories is, look, I'm a jerk and my wife's wonderful, right? So I have to admit to you that I'm a terrible brother. I've got a sister that lives in Houston. We don't talk much, and it's my fault. I hate talking on the phone, and we don't have that much in common. I swear we grew up in different families. I don't know how we're related. And so I just don't check in with her much. My dad is a widower. My mom died about 9 years ago. And so for Thanksgiving, my dad goes and sees my sister. For Christmas, he comes to see me. So I'm in Chicago on Thanksgiving with my wife's family, and I call my dad on Thanksgiving, being the dutiful son that I am. Hey, Dad, how's it going? We just sat down to eat. Oh my gosh, let me call you back. I don't want to interrupt you in the family dinner. Tell everybody I love them. Hey to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll call you back. I call him the next day. Hey, Dad, how's it going? We're just about to walk into the National Funeral Home Museum. It's a real thing. It's in Houston, Texas, and my family is the kind of family that the day after Thanksgiving would go to see the Funeral Home Museum. And I said, that sounds fun. Let me call you back. I'll call you tomorrow. I get a text from my sister on Saturday morning. I'm with the brother-in-laws. We're watching a football game on Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I get a text that says, I can't believe you're so busy that you don't even have time to talk to your own father. Now, that was a snarky text, and I won't go into the family history, but she's a hypocrite. We have a lot of family history that made that text to me unthinkable. Me and my dad have a great relationship. We're fine. And she brought up a whole lot of stuff. And I said, did you seriously text me that? And she responded, I seriously did. I know, I put tone in it. But that's how it sounded to me when she texted me. And I just stopped. I'm like, I'm not going to fight over text about this. So my wife and I go out later on that day to get coffee. Because when you're with family, sometimes you're not together. And I said, hey, let's go get coffee. So we go to get coffee, and I tell her the story I just told you. That my sister texted me after my dad and the thing and the funeral home museum. She texted me, I can't believe you don't have time for your own father. I told her the story. She paused and said, she's dead to me. Are you kidding me? I felt 10 feet tall. Now, that's not a very Christian response. I understand that. My wife is a very lovely person. She didn't mean it. If my sister called her, she would talk to her. What she meant was, I'm with you. And I felt great. It was one of the best moments of my marriage because my wife understands how to be married much better than I. Even though she's never studied Gottman, she doesn't need to because she's a wise person. And she sided with me. Now, she could have said, well, you know, you don't talk to your sister very much, and you do need to call your dad more. He's in his 80s now, so you need to check. And she would have been right if she had said that. But I would have shrugged, and I would have stopped talking because she would have sided with the enemy. This is really important. At the end of the day, when you have the stress-reducing conversation, you can never side with the enemy. You make sure you plant your flag with your spouse. Now later, if later on my wife had said, now, you know, you need to call your sister more, I would have said, you know, you're right. Because she sides with me, I will listen to her. And I will listen to how she thinks I can do better. But not if she jumps on the other side first. So, let's do an exercise. And I don't know why my laptop is talking. I'm going to figure that out in the break. Let's do this exercise where there should be a sheet. We're going to give you 5 minutes to look at this next sheet, Jeremy. Nope.
Wait.
One more.
One more.
There we go. So this is a different kind of exercise. There's not a lot of rules to this one. I just want you to look at this sheet and talk about, hey, here's the bids we're good at. Here's the bids we could do better on. Because there's all different ways to make a bid. So we just want to give you 5 minutes to look at this list and have a conversation between the two of you about responding to the bids. Are you at a 33% level? Could you be at an 86% level? Just have a 5-minute conversation, starting now. Okay, what is wrong with my laptop now? It won't go anymore.
Okay, there it goes. So what you might want to do,
Okay, there we go. Somehow I got stuck on that one slide.
so it's working fine?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we're probably going to go, I want to play, the last game is the island survival game.
Yeah.
It's the fun game. So I really want to get to that.
Okay.
So you think we're okay if we go to 8:15?
I think so.
Because of the circumstances, I think you're fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just tell them if they have to leave, they can get off now. and
Okay.
We understand.
Okay.
Do you want those slides to be the whole screen, or do you want them to still see you? I'll make them bigger, but they can still see you. Let's do that.
Do you want to offer them the PowerPoint? I mean, we can take the copy of that, I can scan them and send them to people if they request.
Sure.
So mention that to them. If they
Okay.
want the PowerPoints, send a request to parents at cfs.org,
Okay.
and we'll send them
I'll
to
go
them.
ahead and see about putting that on the screen too. Well, they've all gotten an email from parents at CFS, so we're good.
Okay. Am I muted?
Yep.
Thank you.
Steve is muted as well.
Oh, my legs are starting to tighten up so much. Oh, had a really hard workout this morning. And it was a big leg workout.
Oh, yeah.
And she asked us to do something with the straps, a hamstring thing. And I just did this. And she goes, "What are you complaining about?" And I was like, "I have to do a seminar tonight. I'm just thinking, how far can I push myself without cramping up in the seminar?"
What do you do on Saturday mornings?
Do a boot camp class with my wife
Oh, yeah.
at the
No,
point.
No, we're at the point, okay.
And my instructor is going to St. Thomas in about a month.
Oh, really?
And whenever she's about to go to a place where she wears a bikini on the beach, she
Yeah.
works out even harder.
Yeah.
And today was the start of that. And I said, "I don't think you need to go on your vacation." I said, "I'm worried about you."
It's not really sticking out there.
Huh?
It's not really sticking out there.
Do I hear the wind, or is that the heat kicking on?
Keep kicking
Okay.
every once in a while.
Because while I'm up there, I'm talking, I'm like, man, is it really windy outside? Okay. Glad I know that now. Man, oh man, oh man.
I'm gonna All right. We're still rolling, man. We're still kicking around. That's good.
Okay.
Did Liz enjoy her week off?
It was her ideal vacation.
She just stayed at home and read and drank coffee.
Just stayed at home and piddled around the house doing projects.
Yeah.
It would drive me nuts.
I know, she needed it like I needed it earlier in the year. I could tell January's just rough for her, but also I know that she has felt the need to be at the building. And she probably needs to with her job being on the computer. I was glad that she took that time off.
I told her, I said, "This is your ideal vacation week."
Yeah.
I would absolutely hate it, but she was so proud every day. She was like, "I got this done and this done," because she loves being productive.
Yeah, well, I know.
So she defined her days as to what she got done. Man.
I'm like, I would define my days by how many shows on Netflix I watch.
Right. Or did I read a book or did I have fun? I
Did I?
define it by fun. Oh yeah, I went with Brad and we had fun.
Yep.
So,
Susan has tried to call, or is going to try to call every member at McKnight that's over 75,
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
she can schedule them for the vaccine.
That's awesome.
She got several scheduled on Friday, and got the several from Maryland Heights also scheduled.
That's great. All right, we are done. You're on.
okay. We're all back. Thanks for doing that exercise. I appreciate it. And Jeremy, do you have the first three principles create PS? Oh, perfect. Okay, good. Yeah, so the first three principles we just covered are going to create, if you put them into practice, they're going to create a positive sentiment override where you start to see what's going right in your marriage as opposed to the negative sentiment override of seeing all the things that are going wrong in your marriage. So it creates a much more positive atmosphere for you and your family members, if you have people living with you, to enjoy. Because the kids don't know what's going on, but they know if the marriage is in a negative sentiment override, they just can't tell you what it's about. They usually blame themselves. They also know if the marriage is in a positive sentiment override. So it impacts more than just the marriage, it impacts all the people living in the house. So the first three principles create that positive sentiment override. Now, one thing we talked about in the break is that we're going to make this PowerPoint available to you. So if you erase the pictures or you're not able to take pictures on the phone, if you will send an email to parents@cfserve.org, you're welcome to have this PowerPoint presentation to go back through if you want. So we'll provide that to you. If you email us at parents@cfserve.org, you'll get the PowerPoint. We appreciate you hanging in with us tonight with all the weird complications that we've had with this marriage seminar. We do appreciate you sticking in with us. All right, the first three create positive sentiment override. Let's talk about principle number 4. It's a bonus principle because I think it's so important. It also lets us play my favorite marriage game from our seminars. So it's a little bit selfish, and you guys are going to have a little bit of fun playing this game about influence. Principle 4 is really written for guys. Now, it's not that women can't get anything out of it, but typically, women have a much easier time accepting and giving influence. Women will give and receive influence from strangers, people they run into in the grocery store, neighbors, people they're walking by on the street. I mean, women are just built genetically for more connection, and they're more relational. Studies of newborn baby girls in the hospital say that if you startle a newborn baby girl, she looks around for eye contact so that somebody can say, "You're okay." If you startle a newborn baby boy in the hospital, he flails. He just flails. And I'm like, that's perfect, because that's kind of what we do the rest of our lives. Women seek influence, and guys flail. So guys have to do a better job of accepting influence from their spouse. Now listen to this. When men allow their wives to influence them, they have happier relationships. They also have wives who are softer in bringing up difficult marital topics. So the Gottman principles work in concert with each other. If you do one thing, you get more of another thing back in return. So guys, when you're willing to accept influence, it means that your wives are going to be gentler with you, which is really good news. When men do not accept influence, there is an 80% chance of divorce. That's huge. That is a strong statistic. If you accept the influence, you're going to be happy. If you don't, there's a terrific chance of divorce. And so what are we talking about? Accepting influence doesn't mean that you're going to be a doormat. Women do not want to be married to doormats. They want to be married to strong leader husbands and men. They want to be married to strong men. But they want to be married to a strong man that will listen to them. So accepting influence doesn't mean you are just a yes dear guy. It doesn't mean that you're a doormat, but it does mean that you will consider listening to their opinion. So, early in our marriage, my wife, as Jeremy can attest to because he works with her, she is always thinking about how to do things different and improve things. And so she is constantly bringing things to me about what to change around the house. Can we put up this shelf, fix this thing, paint this room? And early in our marriage, every response I had to her was, well, and then I would tell her how we couldn't do that, right? So one day she came to me and said, she has a great way of putting things. She said, I'm tired of coming to you like a peasant to a king. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm asking for your help. And I went, ooh, I was not trying to make her feel like a peasant, but I believe that I was making her feel like a peasant. Because I didn't want to do these projects because I didn't want to get off the couch. I just want to lay on the couch and watch sports on the weekends. I don't want to have to do projects. But I was making her feel very lonely. And so I said, I'm going to do that different. And so the next time she came to me with a project, which I swear was like a half an hour later, she said, hey, can we put up this shelf in this closet? I said, yes, we can do that. In my mind, I was thinking, that's not going to work, right? But I responded differently. And I can say now I'm completely reformed and she no longer feels like a peasant. We don't do every idea that she comes up with because there's so many. But we do a lot of them and she no longer feels like a peasant. So we're just talking about accepting influence, listening, considering their opinion. One of our Legends of Marriage videos that we just put out was with Ed and Nancy Tritchler. Ed's a mentor of mine, and he says, oh, I'm the head of the house, but my wife is the neck. And when she turns, you better believe I turn. That's a great way to look at it. All right, so my wife and I say I'm not the head of the house. We're more of a partnership. But if you want to say that you're the head of the house, that's cool, as long as your wife is the neck, and when she turns, you turn, it can work really well. Gottman is very friendly to a faith perspective. And I think it matches really well with what Scripture teaches in Ephesians. That, you know the Scripture, guys, the one that we wish would be used in isolation and out of context. Wives, submit to your husbands. But it doesn't stop there. Before that, it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. I think what it's trying to say is, if we're willing to die for our wives, they would love to submit back to us. They don't have a problem submitting back. But we have to do it first. We're the ones that have to be the servant in the relationship first, and then they naturally respond to submission with submission. We don't do that. We struggle with that. So, we are going a little bit over time. Hope that's okay with everybody, but we did have that major, horrible interruption. So let's do this game. We're going to give you 5 minutes to play the Gottman Island survival game. Then we're going to come back for about a 5-minute wrap-up, okay? And then we'll kind of close, and we'll stick around at the end for any questions or comments or conversations you want to have. So we're going to play the 5-minute Gottman Island survival game. I love this game. You guys are going to have so much fun. Jeremy, put up the next slide. I'm speaking this with like a lot of drama, so imagine a lot of like dramatic music in the background right now. Imagine yourself shipwrecked with your partner on a tropical desert island. Gilligan and Ginger are nowhere in sight. The two of you are the only survivors of this shipwreck. You have no idea where you are. A storm appears to be on the way. You decide that you need to prepare to survive on this island for some time. And you need to find some way to ensure that you can be spotted by a rescue party. There are a lot of items from the ship that washed up on the beach that could help you. But you can only carry 10 items. Step 1. Each of you are going to write down on a separate piece of paper what you consider to be the 10 most important items from an inventory list that we're going to put up in just a second. I want you to rank them in order of importance. So 1 being most important, 10 being least important. You're each doing this separately. So no cheating or talking during this part of the exercise. So Ozzy's going to come up with 10, and Joe's going to come up with 10, and they're going to be separate. And then you're going to rank them. There's the list, but first, I'll come back to that. Step 2 is you share your list with your partner, and together you're going to come up with a consensus list of just 10 items together. So that means you have to cut out of your 20 together, you have to cut out 10. This means you have to talk about it, work as a team to solve the problem. Both of you need to be influential in discussing your viewpoint and in making final decisions. Once you've compromised on a third list, you're going to evaluate how the game went. Think about how effective you were at influencing your partner or not. How effective you were at influencing each other. Did one of you try to dominate? Were you competitive? Did you have fun? Did you work well as a team? So that'll be step 3. So here's the inventory. You each come up with 10, rank them in priority. After you've come up with 10, you come up with a consensus list where you try to influence each other and argue your point as to why you would want toilet paper versus a gun. And then you're going to come up with a compromise list, then you're going to talk about it. We're going to give you 5 minutes to talk about this. If you have any questions, put them on the chat, and we will answer those about how to do this exercise. Ready? Go.
You are muted.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to talk quickly about the magic 6 hours.
What's the magic 6 hours?
At the end of his 40 years of research,
Yeah.
couples that came to his seminars and did better and kept it going better tended to spend 6 hours a week on their marriage.
6 hours.
And the couples that came and got better and didn't keep it better didn't spend 6 hours a week. And it's all divided up into little
Okay, I
bits
see
here
that.
and there. Yeah.
Are you gonna do the signs of gridlock, perpetual problem?
I think I'll buzz through that. Those were kind of there as filler, if I needed filler.
Okay, so you're not going to do.
I will hit on the 69% you can only solve a third of your problems. I will hit on that quickly.
Okay.
And then I will get to the magic 6 hours.
You know, those magic 6 hours are a lot easier to do when you have no kids at home.
Oh,
Oh, man. We do it all the time now.
yeah.
And with COVID, I know I go home now and I gotta give Susan 15 minutes at least to rant
Yeah.
because she has had to deal with some very difficult people.
Is there anyone else having trouble seeing this?
That was during the activity.
Okay, sorry.
That
Didn't
was
mean to interrupt.
the
I just want to
first-
make sure.
first activity.
Okay.
I mean, because she has crazy people. They ask, and they're demanding something that the doctor's office can't give them,
Yeah.
and they don't understand why. It's just some pretty crazy people. So since COVID, that's what we got to do when we first get home. And then
Yeah.
and then if there's more, then she'll talk more about it while we're eating. But then she's fine.
It is a lot easier. I always say to people, we never did the magic 6. We did like the magic 3.
Yeah.
But it's still better than the magic 0.
Yeah. Right.
We did what we could.
Yeah.
Laura and I were having, from beginning of April through November, we probably missed a total, for that whole time, we probably missed a total of 20 days where we didn't walk for half an hour.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was just our thing.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, just that right there is almost 6 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right, right.
You know, I mean, no, 3 hours a week, just doing that.
Yeah.
So, that was great. They've got 2 minutes left, Derek. Do you want to say something like, hey, you got 2 minutes left, make sure you guys are talking and coming up with your last list? You want to say something like that, or no?
No, let's let them go till 5, and then I'll say, does anybody need more time?
Okay.
Susan and I were talking today, once this COVID's over, we're really gonna miss our weekends.
Because you're going to go back to speaking in churches and.
Yeah, I don't speak a lot in churches nowadays because they only meet on Sunday mornings. There's not a lot of opportunities.
That's true.
But, and it's just little things here, things with church here, kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So you're going to do a wrap up after I talk about the magic 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just real quick.
Once you're back on, I'm going to take this list. Correct.
Yeah.
And we're recording it and we'll put it on our YouTube channel.
I'm going to have to put it back together now since we had that little.
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit, but we'll have, and I guess we can,
I would say by Monday evening, you'll have it up there.
okay. And so how do they go to our YouTube channel? CFS, what is it?
I have no clue.
I forget. They can.
There's a link on your website, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, we got 25, 24, 23, 20 seconds left. So. Want to go ahead and take this list off the calendar?
Somebody looks like they're still looking at it, so. Just unmute me.
You are unmuted.
All right, does anybody need more time? Does everybody, if you need more time, just raise your hand real quick.
Got 1,
We got 1,
2, oh.
2.
they're good.
No, it's thumbs up.
Okay, take a couple of more minutes to finish this exercise. While they're finishing up, can somebody, if you want to talk about your experience, if you could raise your hand to talk about it real quick, or if you want to put it on the chat, Steve can relay that to me. But how was that game? Was it hard? Did you have fun? Did it cause a fight? Is anybody fighting right now? We need to stop and talk about it. How was that game for you? If you want to talk, raise your hand.
And they can unmute themselves.
They're all good now.
Oh, they can unmute themselves. All right. So how was it for everybody? Was it okay? Yes or no?
Ozzy's gonna talk.
Stressful due to the short amount of time.
Right. We did put you on the crunch, didn't we? Yeah. All right. Did everybody come up with a consensus 10? Sorta. I'm getting this. Sorta. All right. Well, this is a game designed to show you what it feels like to try to give and receive influence. When we've done this game in the past, a common argument is what I talked about. The woman wants to bring toilet paper, and the guy wants to take a gun or whiskey in case he gets hurt, and it's an antiseptic, right? And so there's all different ways of approaching how to solve this problem, and everybody's coming at it from a different angle. You have to be willing to listen to those arguments, take them seriously, and talk through the compromise. Because we all think we're right? Of course I think I'm right. Who lives their life thinking they're wrong? We all think we do it the right way. But there is another right way to do this. To go back to our definition of contempt, it might play into this game. Contempt is when I think I'm right and my partner is wrong. If I think I'm right and my partner is also right, we can cooperate. We can work through this list together. But if I think she's crazy or he's ridiculous, it's harder to work through that list and have those conversations. So feel free to continue this game after we're done here in just a couple of minutes. If you want to continue this game throughout the night, it's a good way to learn how to give and receive that influence. So we all have perpetual problems. Let me touch on this real quick, then we're going to get to our last thing. 69% of all conflict is perpetual. You're not going to solve every problem. You can't. You can really only solve about a third of your problems in a marriage. The rest you learn to manage. I grew up in Arkansas, and what's weird is I never had allergies before I moved to St. Louis. I have allergies, and so I take allergy meds. I'm not going to change St. Louis. I'm going to take allergy meds, and then I'm going to manage my allergies a lot better. And in a marriage, a lot of times, what we do is we try to change the other person. That's a complete waste of time. Learn to manage the differences better. Work smarter, not harder. And so you're only going to solve about a third of your marital problems. The other 70% you have to learn to work around. We're going to go to the last thing, Jeremy, the magic 6 hours. Now, you can take a picture of this with your phone, but we're also sending you this PowerPoint presentation if you want it. But this is kind of the end of all his research. He does these workshops called the Art and Science of Love workshops. And many couples come to them for the weekend, and many couples get better. Some couples keep it better. And he was interested in what is the difference between the couples who are successful for a lifetime versus the couples who are successful for a short time. The difference is 6 hours a week. He calls it the magic 6 hours. Now, if you're retired or you don't have any kids in the house, like Steve was just talking during the break, that he and Susan have a much easier time doing the magic 6 hours right now because they don't have any kids in the house. If you're like some of us who have kids at home and you feel like you're constantly busy, it might feel overwhelming to try to get in 6 hours a week to work on your marriage. I will tell you this. Early in our marriage, we did not do the magic 6, me and my wife. We probably did more like the magic 3. But the magic 3 is better than the magic 0. So do what you can. If you can't do all 6 hours, do as much as you're able to do in the marriage because it's going to be better than nothing. But let's kind of go through the breakdown real quick, and then we're going to end our seminar by 8:25. We'll be done, okay? The magic 6 hours. Take a shot of this, and I want you to talk about how you can implement this in your marriage in the coming weeks. Before you say goodbye in the morning, learn one thing about your spouse's day, a quick check-in. If you do that 2 minutes a day during Monday through Friday, that's 10 minutes. Again, the deep drama is in the boring little neutral moments that nobody else would think about. Reunions, when you come home at the end of the day, a big greeting and a stress-reducing conversation at the end of the day about the workday. 20 minutes a day times 5, that's an hour and 40 minutes. Look, my dog that I ignore all day long is so excited to see me when I come in the door. How can we do any less? And so one thing we've instituted in our families, whenever anybody comes home, we get up and we go say hello, because it feels lonely to walk into a house and not have anybody notice. Your home is the one place you ought to be noticed and greeted the most. So make it a rule that whenever somebody comes home, you get up out of your lazy chair and you go say hello and you give a hug and a kiss. How was your day? Admiration and appreciation. Find some way every day to communicate genuine affection. 5 minutes a day. You got 5 minutes. Times 7, that's 35 minutes. Affection. Embrace once a day and kiss goodnight. Don't hold back. A lot of love and affection. 5 minutes a day times 7, 35 minutes. A weekly date. Just the two of you. Now, if you've got kids like me, you're going to say, we're not leaving the house. We don't have 2 hours a week. Do you have the ability to have a date at home? Can you watch a show? Can you play a game? Scrabble, backgammon? Can you take a walk? Jeremy was just saying how during the pandemic, he and his wife have taken a 30-minute walk every day, pretty much every day in the quarantine. That's a great way to stay connected. That can count as a date. And then lastly, a State of the Union address, where you sit down for a sacred hour a week and say, how are we doing? Was there anything I missed? I know you were a little mad at me on Tuesday. What was that about? How do we clean that up? It's the conversation at the end of the week that's just about the two of you to check in and see how are we doing as a couple. If you do the magic 6 hours, there's almost a guarantee that you're going to have a successful relationship for 40 plus years, or as long as you live, if you live that long. So we want you to really focus on the magic 6. That's going to be included in the PowerPoint that we're going to send to you if you email us at parents@cfserve.org. So this kind of concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for sticking with us through the awful interruption. We are so sorry about that. We are glad that most of you got back on. I'm going to stick around for about 15, 20 minutes. If you have any questions, you can chat, we can talk. If you want anything clarified about what we talked about tonight, we'll stick around for about 15 minutes afterwards. Thank you so much for making the effort to be here tonight. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate what you did.